If you ever turn your back on God, I might not live to see your return, she whispered, her eyes wet with something that didn't look like just tears. David never forgot the day his mother cried in front of him, not because of something that happened, but because of the man he was becoming. He was raised in a home filled with prayer, faith, and soft hymns playing during Sunday breakfast. But somewhere between childhood and manhood, he stopped believing, not because God wasn't real, but because the world made more promises than heaven ever did. He chased women, he chased fame, he chased nights that ended in regret. And he ran faster every time someone mentioned the word church. His parents, they begged, they cried. His father stopped talking, but his mother, she knelt every night by the door, praying he'd return to the boy she once raised. Until one night, she grabbed his hand, trembling. David, if you keep living like this, I might harm myself. I don't want to bury my only son, but I also don't want to live to see you burn. That broke him. Something cracked in his chest. The very next Sunday, he shocked everyone. He stood up in front of the same congregation he'd avoided for years and announced, I am giving my life to God. The entire church erupted in hallelujahs. His mother fainted, not from disbelief, but relief. He thought that was the end of his rebellion. But it was only the beginning of something darker than sin itself. Do you think he truly meant to change, or was it guilt talking? Would you believe someone who walked away from everything and came back claiming to be saved? Comment your honest thoughts. David didn't just return to God, he threw himself into faith like a man drowning in guilt. His parents were overjoyed. So much so that they whispered to each other in the dark, maybe he's meant to be a pastor. And eventually, David believed it too. He opened a small church on the edge of town. The walls were plain, the benches secondhand, but the sermons came from the deepest corners of his soul. People listened, people wept, people believed, but then they stopped coming. Why? Because there were no miracles. No healings, no blind eyes opening. No signs, no wonders, just words. And in a town obsessed with divine signs, words weren't enough. Be honest, would you stay in a church if the pastor never showed proof of God's power? Or is faith alone enough? Tell me what you do. At first, David thought it was just bad luck. Then he heard the name, Pastor Jerry. A new church just 5 blocks away, crowded, loud, full of music, light, and miracles. The sick walked, the barren conceived. The poor became rich overnight. One by one, David's church emptied out. Sunday mornings turned into echo chambers. Once packed pews now stared at him like hollowed eyes. He prayed harder, preached deeper, fasted until his hands trembled, but the people didn't return. Instead, they told him straight to his face, "Your God talks, Pastor Jerry's God acts." And suddenly, David wasn't a preacher. He was a question mark in a pastor's robe. One night, David stormed out of his home, his mother's voice echoing behind him, "Be patient, my son. God isn't finished with you." But David had lost his patience and maybe his faith too. As he wandered under the streetlights, a voice sliced through the silence, "David, my son, you look lost." An old man stood beneath the lamp, white beard, piercing eyes. A smile that knew secrets it should never have learned. "You want your church to grow?" he asked. Then stopped asking for God's permission. David froze. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer. He only whispered, "Call for me when you're ready. Say great one 3 times, and I'll come." Then he vanished into the mist. And David stood alone, unsure if what he saw was a dream or a doorway. David tried to ignore the old man's words. He prayed more, preached more, but no one came back. Until one Sunday, only 2 people sat in the pews, both of them asleep halfway through the sermon. After the service, David stared at the cross above the altar. "God, why are you silent?" No answer, no breeze, no warmth, no peace, just stillness. That night, David stood in his office, candles flickering around him. He closed his eyes. "Great one, great one, great one." The air turned cold, the shadows shifted. And from the darkness, the old man emerged, grinning. "I knew you'd call," he said. David didn't respond because deep down, he already knew he had just done something he couldn't undo. What do you think the price will be? Power never comes free. Drop your wildest theory. The path was narrow. The wind whispered names that David didn't recognize. Somewhere in the distance, something howled. But then he saw it, floating above a still pond. A golden feather glimmering like it was plucked straight from an angel's wing. David stepped forward slow, cautious. Just as he reached out to grab it, a shadow rose behind him. Tall, towering, eyes glowing red, breath like smoke. It didn't growl, it spoke. "You are not worthy." David froze. His knees trembled. He wanted to run, but something deeper inside him whispered, "Face it, this is your test." He turned, heart pounding. "You are not worthy." David froze. His knees trembled. He wanted to run, but something deeper inside him whispered, "Face it, this is your test." He turned, heart pounding. "Leave me alone," he shouted. The creature paused, then vanished into the trees. David grabbed the feather, and for a moment, he swore he heard his mother's voice in the wind. The next stop on the path was darker than night itself, a cave. Its entrance swirling with blue mist, like fog from another world. Inside, a glowing pedestal cradled a crystal of truth bright, almost humming with energy. But the mist hissed, "Only the pure-hearted may enter." David hesitated. He thought about his sins, his mother's tears, the hunger for power. Then out loud, he said, "I want to help. I want to guide people to God, even if I've strayed." The mist parted. He stepped forward, took the crystal, and instantly felt a painful flood of memories. Every mistake, every lie, every moment he could have chosen love but didn't. Tears rolled down his face as the crystal's glow dimmed, then brightened. It had accepted him, but at what cost? The final item waited atop a mountain cloaked in wind and guilt. Each step upward felt heavier than the last. Memory screamed in his head, his mother's voice begging him to stop, his father's silence, his church falling apart. At the summit, a silver chalice shimmered resting on an altar of stone. But as David reached for it, the wind whispered a different truth. "You are already losing yourself." He hesitated, then gritted his teeth. "I have no choice." He grabbed the chalice. The wind screamed, and then silence. All three sacred items pulsed with power in his hands. But deep inside David, something else began to break. When David returned, the old man was waiting, grinning like a spider next to its web. "You've done well," he said. "Now power is yours." With a wave of his hand, the world shimmered. David found himself back in his church. The candlelight flickered strangely, the walls seemed thinner, the air heavier in his hands. Golden feather, blue crystal, silver chalice. "Now you will lead," the old man whispered, "and they will follow." The next morning, David put on his best suit, walked into the street, and found a man sitting on the sidewalk, crippled, legs twisted since birth. A crowd gathered. This was it. David lifted his hand, "Rise and walk." The man blinked, tried, fell, nothing. Laughter, whispers, shouts. Fraud, he lied, fake prophet. David ran, face red, heart pounding. Back into his empty church, slamming the door behind him, and for the second time. "Great one, great one, great one. Did you really think 3 items were enough?" He chuckled, David's fists clenched. "You lead to me." "No," the old man said calmly. "I just left out the 4th step." David's breath caught in his throat. "You need a sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" he whispered. The old man stepped forward. His eyes burned. "A human one." David's soul screamed. "Who?" The old man leaned in. "Who do you love the most?" Silence. Then David whispered, "My mother." "What would you do right now? Walk away and lose everything? Or go through with it and become something else? Comment the hardest choice you've ever made." David didn't eat that night. He just stared at the red cloth. The old man gave him the same cloth he was told to drape over his mother while she slept. Cover her with it, the old man had said, and in the morning, power will be yours. His hands trembled. His heart begged him to stop, but in his head, another voice whispered, "What's one life for the salvation of thousands?" He crept to her room. She was asleep, peaceful. She was asleep, peaceful, breathing softly like she always did after midnight prayer. He stood at her doorway for a long, long time. Then he stepped in, unfolded the cloth, and laid it gently over her. The next morning, David's father found her first. He called her name, once, twice. But she didn't stir. Her hand was cold. Her lips blue, her soul gone. He collapsed at her side, screaming, sobbing, begging God to take him instead. "Wake up! Please wake up!" David stood in the doorway, frozen. He watched his father crumble. He saw the woman who had loved him unconditionally. Now lifeless and still, he said nothing. He knelt beside her and cried real tears. But whether they were for his mother or for himself, even he couldn't tell anymore. Was this the moment David truly lost himself? Or was he already gone the second he said, "Great one"? Let's talk in the comments. 2 days after her funeral, David returned to church. He expected silence. But the building was packed, wall to wall. People filled every bench, every window, every corner. Prophet David, they whispered, he carries true power now. And as he walked to the front, something twisted inside him. Not joy, not peace, pride. Finally, he thought, "They see me." He lifted his voice, preached fire and thunder, and they praised him like a god. But somewhere in the back, a voice asked, was it worth her life? He ignored it. That Sunday, a woman brought a blind man forward. Prophet David, she begged, pray for him, make him see. David froze. This was the moment. If the miracle didn't work, everything would crumble. He placed his hand on the man's head. In the name of power, see. The man blinked, then gasped, I can see, I can see. The crowd erupted, tears, screams, applause. And David, he smiled, but deep down, he felt nothing. As David's church exploded with followers, his father grew distant. He hadn't returned since the funeral. He didn't speak of his wife. And he never said the word miracle. One evening, he came to visit. He looked around the grand new church-painted walls, velvet seats, golden crosses. You've built quite an empire, son, he said quietly. David smiled. God has blessed me. But his father's eyes didn't shine. They stayed cold, heavy. Some blessings cost too much. David's chest tightened. Are you accusing me of something? No, his father said softly. I'm asking you, can you still sleep at night? One day, David made dinner for his father. He crushed the powder the old man had given him the same way he took his mother. He stirred it in, served the plate. Sat, watched. His father smiled gently. Bowed his head. Lord, bless this food. Protect us from evil. Keep us safe. He took the first bite. David waited and waited, but nothing happened. His father finished the meal, stretched, yawned, Good night, son. That was delicious. David sat frozen. The powder had failed. Or maybe faith had won. David locked himself in his secret office. His heart pounded, his mind screamed. The powder failed. He stood before the candlelight, eyes wide with panic. Great one, great one, great one. The old man emerged from the shadows, amused. You look disappointed, David snapped. I said it might, the old man corrected, his eyes glinting. But your father's spirit is stronger than I anticipated. David's voice shook. What do I do now? The old man stepped closer, voice cold. If you truly want power, you must sacrifice something even more precious. David whispered, terrified. What? What's more precious than a parent? The old man smiled. Your manhood. David's face turned pale. He stepped back, shook his head. You're insane, but the old man only shrugged. Power always demands more, and you've tasted it now. Silence stretched between them. David thought of the crowds, the cheers, the way people looked at him like he was chosen. He also thought of his father, the disappointment in his eyes. And finally, he asked the question he never thought he'd ask: how do I give it up? The ritual was dark, twisted, and when it was over, David lay curled on the floor, screaming into the dark. If you had to trade part of your humanity for greatness, would you do it, or would you walk away forever? Let's see who dares to answer. Days passed. David returned to the pulpit. The miracles became louder, faster. People collapsed crying at his feet. The church overflowed. He had never looked more powerful, but at night he sat alone. You should get married, his father said one day. Start a family, you're not getting any younger. David smiled weakly. The Lord hasn't revealed the right woman yet. But he knew the truth. He couldn't be a husband. He couldn't be a father, not anymore. Then he met her, anointed, beautiful, kind, pure-hearted. She loved God with all her soul. And when she looked at David, she didn't see a prophet, she saw a man. They talked after service. Then during weekdays, then into the night. For the first time in a long time, David felt human again. He fell in love. And one day, holding her hand beneath the old oak tree, she whispered, I want to build a future with you. He smiled, but inside, terror. After they married, everything changed. Anointed was patient, gentle, but confused. Weeks passed, then months. And David never touched her, not even once. Finally, one night, she came to him, tears in her eyes. David, why haven't we shared anything as husband and wife? Is it me? David swallowed the lump in his throat. The Lord hasn't given me that instruction yet. She nodded slowly, but her smile was forced. She went to bed that night questioning everything. And David sat in the dark, drowning in silence. After a family dinner, David's father leaned back, full of joy. I can't wait to hold my grandchildren, he said, eyes shining. David's hand froze on the table. Anointed reached over, squeezing his hand. Me too, she said softly. David forced a smile, but his stomach churned. The lease sat like acid in his throat. He knew there would never be children. How long can someone keep pretending before the truth cracks through? Do you think Anointed will discover his secret? Let's hear your predictions. Weeks passed. Every time Anointed smiled at him, David felt like a knife twisted deeper into his soul. She cooked for him, prayed with him, kissed his cheek goodnight. And each time she said, I love you, he wanted to scream. No, you don't. You love the man I used to be, and he's gone. One night, as she lay sleeping next to him, he turned to face the wall and cried without making a sound. Rumors had started, whispers around town. David's church grew. Too fast, miracles, or manipulation? What happened to his mother? At first, David ignored them. But then, one evening, his father asked him to sit. His voice was gentle, but his eyes piercing. David, I need to ask something, and I want the truth. David tensed. What is it, father? Did you do something to gain this power? Silence. David's blood turned cold. Sunday arrived, the church was full. But the air was different, thick, suspicious. People didn't just watch David, they studied him. He noticed. During the sermon, a woman wheeled a crippled man to the altar. Please, Prophet David, help him walk. David nodded. Laid his hands. Rise and walk. Nothing. He tried again, louder. Still nothing. Whispers, murmurs, side eyes. And then, he's a fake, someone shouted. The crowd broke, anger, doubt, mockery. David stood frozen. And then ran out the back, through the corridor, into his office, slamming the door. In the shadows of his office, David whispered, Great one, great one, great one. The old man appeared, cold and still. What's wrong, Prophet David? He sneered, You lied to me, the power. It's fading, the old man chuckled. Power is not a gift, it's a hunger, and hunger must be fed. David's stomach dropped. Fed with what? The old man's smile darkened. Another sacrifice? No. Yes. Who? Your father. David knew the process. He prepared the food, crushed the new powder, served it, calm, polite. His father smiled, sat, bowed his head. Dear Lord, bless this food, protect us from evil. David froze. That prayer again. His father took a bite, finished the plate, yawned. Good night, son, that was lovely. David stood frozen. Again, it hadn't worked. Is prayer stronger than poison? Or is David losing control over the very darkness he once mastered? Let me hear your thoughts. David stood in the candlelit room again. Great one, it didn't work. The old man stepped out of the dark like a grin slipping from a nightmare. Your father is protected by a deeper force. Then what do I do? The old man's eyes glowed. You must give something even more sacred than blood. What now? Silence, then your manhood, David. If you want to keep everything, you must give up everything. David staggered back, numb, dizzy, but the crowd was growing again. And he couldn't let them see him fall, so he nodded. David stood under the candlelight. The old man moved slowly, hands glowing with something colder than fire. Are you ready? David didn't speak. He just nodded. The ritual was unspeakable. Pain tore through him. His screams echoed off the church walls, and when it was over, he wasn't the same. Not in body, not in mind. He curled on the cold stone floor, gasping. Now, the old man said, they'll believe in you forever. But David couldn't answer because part of him was already gone. Days later, David returned to church. He stood taller, his voice clearer, his eyes deeper. Miracles happened with a whisper. The sick walked, the deaf heard. The blind saw, people bowed before him. Prophet David, he had become a legend. He opened another church in the next town, then another. Every city wanted to see the man who defied reality. But at night, he stared into the mirror, asking, if I'm so full of power, why do I feel so hollow? After a massive service, David's father came to visit. He looked around the massive sanctuary, then back at his son. I'm proud of what you've built. David nodded. Thank you. Now it's time for the next step, his father said. What step? Family, grandchildren, a legacy. David's heart stopped. He faked a smile. In God's time, Father. But his father's eyes narrowed. Suspicion had returned. He knew, or he was starting to. Anointed had been patient, but patience has a limit. One evening, she sat across from David, eyes full of unshed tears. I waited, I prayed. I honored our marriage. David looked away. But why do you never touch me? Why do you turn away when I come near? He opened his mouth, then shut it, then lied. The Lord hasn't spoken yet. Anointed nodded slowly, but her smile faded, for good. The whispers were louder now. People noticed the cracks. David's sermons became sharper, more urgent, and the people cheered louder than ever. But it wasn't real. They were watching him, studying. Some swore the miracles looked staged. Others said his eyes looked different. He laughed when no one made a joke. He prayed with a smirk on his lips, and slowly, faith turned into fear. One night, Anointed tried again. She held David's hand and looked into his eyes. Please, I love you. I want to be close to you. He smiled sadly. You already are. But she shook her head. Not like this. We're married in name, but I don't even know who you are anymore. David turned away. He couldn't say it. Not the truth, not the horror, not the price he paid. So he said nothing, and in that silence, something between them died. That Sunday, while David preached to a crowd of thousands, he saw a woman near the front, one he hadn't seen in years. It was the woman who had once mocked him. Words are not enough. Show us power. She stood now watching him with haunted eyes. And for a moment, David saw himself. Before the rituals, before the sacrifice, before the Great One, and something cracked inside him. He forgot his sermon, he forgot the crowd. He just stared at her because in her eyes, he saw the man he used to be. That night, David looked in the mirror. He didn't recognize what stared back. The man in the reflection wore his face, but the eyes empty. He touched the glass, it was cold. Just like the bed he never shared. Just like the church that clapped for a man they didn't know. Just like the cloth he once laid over his mother. "Who am I?" he whispered, and the mirror whispered back. "Who do you want them to believe you are?" That night, David was woken by a sound. Not outside, beneath the floor, a whisper, a whimper. A name, David. He bolted upright. Sweat clung to his skin. He pressed his ear to the cold marble. And heard it again, David. Why? His mother's voice, muffled, pained, calling from under the very church he built. He staggered back, covered his ears, screamed. "You're dead, you're gone," but the whisper didn't stop. The next morning, Anointed decided to clean the church office. She opened a drawer David always kept locked. Inside, folded carefully, was a red cloth, soft, dusty, but stained with something dark and dried, and something about it felt wrong. When David entered the room, he saw it in her hands. His blood went cold. "Where did you get that?" Anointed didn't answer. She only stared and asked quietly, "What is this?" David snatched the cloth from her hands. His breath came fast. "It's nothing, old fabric. From an old ritual." Anointed's eyes narrowed. "Whose ritual?" "Don't ask questions you're not ready to understand," he snapped, but she didn't flinch. "You're not the man I married, David. I feel it when I touch you. You speak of God, but you haven't looked at heaven in months." The cloth slipped from his fingers, and in that moment, he realized he couldn't hide forever. That Sunday, David stood before the crowd. He opened his mouth to preach, but the words felt foreign. He looked down at the pulpit, and it cracked right down the center. No one else saw it, but he did. He stared as a thin black line ran through the altar like a scar. "God, are you still watching me?" But heaven stayed silent. And in that silence, the old man laughed. That evening, someone knocked on David's office door. A man he didn't recognize. But the eyes familiar. "I'm Pastor Jerry. The same one who stole David's followers long ago." "I've heard stories," Jerry said. "They say you can raise the dead." David smirked. "What do you want?" "To ask one question." Jerry stepped closer. "How much did it cost you to become this version of yourself?" David froze, because deep down, he knew too much. That night, David dreamed of fire. He stood in his church, but the walls were flames. His followers were laughing, screaming, melting. And in the center stood his mother. She didn't speak, she just looked at him, disappointed, broken. He dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry." She reached out her hand, then whispered, "Then prove it." He woke up gasping for air, drenched in sweat. Outside, the sky rumbled with thunder. Because repentance had finally knocked. Sunday came again. Thousands waited in silence. Cameras on, hands lifted, expecting another miracle. David stood before them, but this time, he didn't raise his hands. He lowered his head. "I have lied to you all." The room fell still. There were no divine miracles. Only darkness in disguise. Gasps, murmurs, a child cried. David's voice shook. "I gave up my soul for this pulpit. I sacrificed my mother." Screams. People rushed to leave. Some fainted, others wept, but David stood firm. Because for the first time, he told the truth. That night, the old man came, not summoned, unleashed. His form darker than ever, his voice pure rage. "You dare betray me?" David stood tall. "I do." "You broke the covenant." "No," David said, "you broke me." The old man's eyes glowed red. "Then I will take what's left." With a hiss, he surged toward David, but this time, David didn't flinch. As the old man reached out, David's father burst through the door, holding a wooden cross, his voice calm, firm. "You will not take my son," the old man laughed. He belongs to me. No, the father said. He belongs to God. He held up the cross. It glowed. The old man screamed and vanished. David collapsed, trembling, sobbing. His father knelt beside him. You came back, son. That's all that matters now. At dawn, lightning struck the church steeple. Fire erupted. Smoke swallowed the sky. The entire building gone within hours. People said it was an accident. Others whispered it was judgment. David watched from a distance. No terrors, no words, just silence, because sometimes ashes are all that remain after a lie burns too long. David left a note on Anointed's pillow. It read, "You deserve a husband, not a hollow statue. I loved you the way a broken man loves light he can't hold. You gave me warmth when I was made of ash. But I must go now because I need to learn how to be human again." He left quietly without goodbye. And Anointed, reading his words, wept. Not out of heartbreak, but out of hope. If someone you loved walked away to fix themselves, would you wait or would you let go completely? What does love require? David walked for days until he found a river, quiet, forgotten. He knelt by its edge. No robes, no titles, no altar, just a man. He whispered, "God, I don't deserve your voice, but if you're still listening, I'm here." The river didn't answer, but it moved gently, steady, and for the first time in years, David felt something real: peace. Years later, in a small village, there's a quiet man who tends a garden behind a tiny chapel. He speaks little, smiles often. The villagers know him only as Brother David. He never performs miracles, but he listens, prays, and holds the hand of anyone who feels too broken to be loved. One day, a little boy asked him, "Were you always a man of God?" David looked at the sky, then at the boy, and said softly, "No, but I died so that one day I could be." The end.